top spot has so far been the creepiest call you've ever had to respond to, and what happened? Unfiltered Confessions, voiced by William Bennett. Got a call for a missing child, got to the home to find the mother highly distressed and not sure what to do. I called on everyone to first search the home and property. I decided to search the backyard because it was a large wooded lot with no visible fence. After about 10 minutes, I found the boy. It was caught on the old chain link fence in the woods that was blocked by a bunch of trees, so you couldn't see it from the house. He had basically gotten strangled to death on the fence. He must have been climbing it, fell, and got his hooded sweatshirt caught on it. The worst part for me was having to call it on the radio, knowing the mother might hear it inside from one of the other officers' radios. I responded to a report of an unresponsive infant. When I arrived, all the family members were standing around casually in front of a yard pointing into the house. I found the baby in the black room, laying on her back on a bare mattress. I started CPR but realized the baby was probably already deceased. We rushed her out to the arriving ambulance, hoping they had a way to bring her back. I learned she was the mother's second suspicious SID as death, and I had her other children removed from her care. The difficult part was when I left the scene and went to the ER to see what came of the situation. As I walked in and asked where she was, an ER nurse walked over to me and handed me the deceased baby, swaddled in a blanket, and told me to wait for someone to show me to the morgue. So I'm standing there in the ER uniform, holding what everyone thinks is a live infant, but rather an infant corpse. Several people stopped by wanting to see her and commenting on how cute it is to see an officer holding a baby. I just smiled, but it killed me inside. I was ushered back to the morgue after what felt like an eternity, and told I had to wait with the baby until the medical examiner arrived. They took the blankets off and laid her on a stainless steel gurney and left me alone with her again. I lounged around the morgue for about an hour waiting. By the time I got home several hours after the end of my shift, because the call came out 15 minutes before the end of my 10-hour shift, I lay down on my bed and cried for a long time. My young daughter was in daycare and my wife was at work. I really needed to hold both of them, so the house felt incredibly empty. My daughter was only slightly older than the infant, and when I was looking at her earlier, I kept seeing my own daughter. I didn't get any sleep at all before going back in for the next shift later that night. Got a call that someone isn't answering their phone or the doorbell. We got to the house and noticed that every window was planted by either curtains or pieces of paper. We rang the doorbell and yelled through the letterbox, but there was no answer. We opened the door and got inside. In the house, it looked like someone just had lunch. There was bread on the table and juice or milk in the glasses. Children's toys scattered all around. Then I saw a note that gave me chills. It was a note. As the door was locked from the inside, the person had to be in the house. We checked room by room and my heartbeat was at 300% when I checked the bathroom. Preparing myself for slit wrists or throats, I opened the door slowly, but there was nothing. Finally, one more room left, which was the attic. We walked slowly up the stairs and we found the resident there, hanging from a beam. I will never forget the adrenaline I had, the scene in the living room, or the resident I found. My father-in-law is sitting beside me, so I asked him. He is a retired sheriff, was a deputy before. He was the first responder to an accident. A truckload of farm workers were coming back from the fields. The trunk went over a hump and an interception, and our little girl in the back of the truck flew out and landed head first on the pavement. My father-in-law held her as she moaned and eventually died in her arms. He says he still hears her sounds in his head all these years later. Oh god, this reminds me of my uncle's story. He dealt with the traffic accidents, and one time he was called out to one accident where a convertible had flipped over and slid. The mental image haunts me to this day. Working third shift on Halloween night, I'm out by one of our smaller lakes just outside the city limits. Kids love to go out and drink, which is surrounded by some very nice houses. Going through the neighborhood, each of the roads ends at a small 2-lane road that surrounds the lake. I'm slowing to the stop sign and already started to look to my right to make the turn, but my headlight starts tracing the rock wall that surrounds the lake. I catch something out of the corner of my eye and one of the large trees that dots the walk path. I back up to see what it was and I see a guy hanging. At first I thought it was a Halloween decoration. The neighborhood is really into decorating for every holiday, so I stop, get out of, and as soon as my flashlight hit him, I realized, nope, no decoration. He's dead. As I'm standing there getting ready to call it in, I notice a gaggle of kids coming down the street trick-or-treating. As soon as they see my car, they start heading my way faster, so I book it back up the block to meet the parent walking with them and tell her she needs to take the long way around the block the other way. She can see it on my face. I'm not kidding. Turns out he was a 20-year-old that was devastated about his girlfriend breaking up with him, and she lived in the last house on that block where she would see him the next morning when she looked out her window. We responded to a burglary alarm at a mortuary and found that one of the rear doors was left open. Policy now dictates that the entire building needs to be cleared, searched, to confirm that it was a false alarm, which most are. It's the middle of the night and totally dark. We use flashlights and never turn on lights. We walk into one of the rooms and see a body on a table. It appeared that it was waiting to be processed, possibly embalmed, by the mortician. It smelled like a mildly decomposing body. Suddenly I see a shadow to my right and I shine my light there and find nothing out of the ordinary. I immediately smell a really strong whiff of perfume blown by me. The search was completed more expeditiously than normal after that. Nothing was found.
My cousin is a cop, and he responded to a call on Valentine's Day night. A 12-year-old girl called in to say her mother had blown her brains out in the living room. I guess her and her brother were getting ready for dinner, and the mom just shot herself. He said the creepy thing about it was dinner all set up, drinks on the table, and suddenly she shot herself. Kids were sitting outside when he arrived. To this day, I can't imagine Valentine's Day for them, but I know that is something that's stuck with him seeing that.
Not a cop, but a correctional officer in Texas. One time a guy slit the forearm side of his elbows where it bends. He laid there in a big puddle of his own blood. I was one of the responders that day. I will never forget it. As soon as you entered the cell, the smell just hit you. Blood has strong metallic smell, which I never realized before. It had been laying there a while, so the blood had coagulated, which again, I did not expect. As we lifted the barely conscious guy out of the blood fell off his body in chunks like jello. It was pretty disturbing because I didn't expect any of it, nor I was able to mentally prepare for it. We're not really medically trained, so all of it was completely surprising to me. Not a cop myself, but my dad is, and I asked him this one time. He told me it was when he went to this one house because a woman had called and said that men were breaking into the house. He guessed there, and he said it was immediately very clear that the woman was not exactly altogether mentally. He said she kept mumbling things and was very jumpy and skittish, not to mention that every single wall of her house apparently had at least 6 or 7 crosses on it, if not more. He calms her down, checks around the house for any signs of entry or just anything weird, but there's absolutely nothing that would indicate that anyone had been trying to or had been successful in breaking in. He said she followed him around the entire time and would point to things like a doorknob or window latches and say,
"Oh, that's not where I left it. That's how they got in."
He said the whole thing was fairly eerie, considering it was at this woman's house in the middle of the night, surrounded by crosses and listening to her mumble about random shit. To make her feel better, he did a sweep of the whole house to see if there was anyone else inside, which there wasn't. He said the one thing that made it creepy for him was the fact that every few minutes she'd say something like,
"Oh, they're here again."
or,
"He is right behind us. I can feel it."
My uncle was a surgeon and had to be called several times out to a house for domestic abuse. This older guy had some young 18-year-old. He would pay for the guy to swallow certain objects like paper clips and human hair. The kid would poop it out into a bag and the older guy would sift through the feces like a goddamn treasure hunt for the items. He would then put them into an envelope and file them. Edit: the domestic abuse had nothing to do with the Poo Treasure Hunt. I don't think it's illegal, just super creepy. This one may win as creepy. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on more super interesting discussions. In the meantime, you can check out our other videos.